This is the face of the only enemy pilot to ever bomb the mainland of the United States from an airplane. His name was Nobuo Fujita, and in 1942 his mission was to set the great forests of America ablaze and strike terror into a nation already reeling from war. But this is not just the story of a failed attack. It's the story of what happened 20 years later, when the very town he tried to destroy did the unthinkable. They invited him back, not as a prisoner, not as a war criminal, but as a guest of honor. This is the story of an act of war and an extraordinary act of forgiveness. The year is 1942. America is a nation gripped by fear and anger. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor shattered the country's sense of invincibility. On the West Coast, the fear was palpable. People blacked out their windows at night, fearing another attack could come at any moment. The war, which had seemed so far away, was now on their doorstep. In April of 1942, America struck back. In a daring mission known as the Doolittle Raid, 16 B-25 bombers flew off an aircraft carrier and bombed Tokyo. The raid did minimal physical damage, but its psychological impact on Japan was immense. Their homeland, which they believed to be sacred and untouchable, had been violated. The Japanese High Command was desperate to retaliate, to prove that they too could strike the American homeland. But how? They couldn't get a fleet of bombers close enough, so they turned to one of their most secret and ingenious weapons, the submarine aircraft carrier. These giant submarines carried a small, disassembled seaplane in a watertight hangar on their deck. The plan was as simple as it was audacious. Surface off the American coast, assemble the plane, launch it with a catapult, and let it wreak havoc. They just needed the right pilot for the job. Enter Warrant Flying Officer Nobuo Fujita. Fujita was not a fanatic. He was a dedicated, highly skilled and patriotic career pilot in the Imperial Japanese Navy. He was a professional, and he was one of the few trained for this incredibly dangerous and experimental type of mission. When he was given his orders, he accepted them with a deep sense of honor. His submarine, the I-25, would carry him and his Yokosuka Glen seaplane across the Pacific. His mission was not to bomb a city, but to start a massive forest fire. The logic was terrifying. A huge blaze in the vast forests of Oregon would cause panic, divert American resources from the war effort, and serve as a powerful psychological blow. His plane was armed not with high explosive bombs, but with two 168-pound incendiary bombs, designed to burn. On September 9, 1942, before dawn, the I-25 surfaced off the coast of Oregon. In the darkness, Fujita's crew worked quickly to assemble his plane. He climbed into the cramped cockpit, and with a roar, the catapult launched him into the sky. He was alone. One man, in one tiny plane, flying over an enemy continent. Below him in the early morning light, he saw his target, an endless silent sea of dark green pine and fir trees. He released his first bomb and watched as smoke began to curl up from the forest floor. But someone was watching. In a fire lookout tower on Mount Emily, a Forest Service ranger named Howard Gardner was on duty. He saw the small, unfamiliar plane. Something was wrong. Then he saw the puff of smoke. He immediately radioed for help. What Fujita didn't know was that the region had been hit by recent rains. The forest was damp, and the undergrowth was wet. The fire, which was supposed to become an inferno, struggled to catch. Rangers on the ground reached it quickly, and had it under control within hours. Unaware of his failure, Fujita flew back to the I-25, was recovered, and the submarine slipped back beneath the waves. 3 weeks later, on September 29th, he tried again. He flew another sortie, dropped his second bomb, and returned. But once again, the damp conditions and the quick response of the forest rangers prevented any significant fire. From a military perspective, the only mission to ever bomb the American mainland by air was a complete failure. Fujita returned to Japan in shame, the memory of his failed mission a private burden for the rest of the war. The war ended. Japan was defeated. Nobuo Fujita put away his uniform and became a civilian. He opened a small metalware shop and tried to build a normal life, to forget the war. The story of his secret mission over Oregon became a distant, almost dreamlike memory. In the small town of Brookings, Oregon, the story became local legend. A strange footnote in their town's history. Life went on. The forests grew back over the small bomb craters. 20 years passed. The world changed. The bitter hatred of the war began to fade, replaced by a new, fragile peace. Then, in 1962, the Brookings Junior Chamber of Commerce had a radical idea. For their upcoming annual Azalea Festival, they wanted a gesture that would promote international friendship. They discovered that the pilot who had bombed them was still alive. So, they decided to do the unthinkable. They sent a letter to Nobuo Fujita in Japan, inviting him to be the guest of honor at their festival. The town erupted in controversy. Veterans protested. Many saw it as a betrayal, calling Fujita a war criminal who should be tried, not celebrated. In Japan, Fujita was terrified. He was filled with a deep sense of shame and feared he would be met with anger and insults. But he felt it was his duty to go, to apologize. As a symbol of his deep remorse, he decided to bring his most precious family heirloom, his 400-year-old samurai sword. He would offer it to the town as a gift of peace. But he made a solemn vow. If he was met with hostility, he would use that same sword to perform seppuku, ritual suicide, right there on the steps of the Brookings Town Hall. When his plane landed and he walked into the town, he was met not with screams of anger, but with silence, and then with applause. The mayor walked forward and extended his hand. The town of Brookings had chosen forgiveness over hatred. They met their former enemy not with fists but with open hands. Overwhelmed and speechless, Fujita tearfully presented his ancient family sword to the mayor. It was accepted not as a weapon of surrender, but as a profound gift of friendship. Nobuo Fujita later said that the welcome he received in Brookings was the most important and moving experience of his entire life. It washed away decades of shame. This was not the end of his story with the town, but the beginning. He returned 3 more times, becoming a beloved figure. He planted a tree at the bomb site as a prayer for peace. He sponsored 3 Brookings high school students to visit Japan, to build a bridge between their cultures. Shortly before his death in 1997, he made one last donation of $1,000 to the Brookings Library to purchase books so that the people of the town could learn more about the world. He asked that the donation be made in the name of a good American friend. When he died, his daughter buried some of his ashes at the very spot in the Oregon forest where he had once dropped his bombs. The man who came to burn a forest ended up planting a tree, an ember of war, fanned not by hatred but by forgiveness, to become a warm and lasting light of friendship, a testament to the idea that even the deepest wounds of war can be healed by the simple, radical power of human connection.